Hello and welcome back to the third rail. Around last Christmas, I received the last SNCB item I needed for my collection of Märklin models. Today, I thought I'd get all my Belgian models out for a show and tell. We'll proceed chronologically, have a brief look at each model. We'll cover the odd bit of trivia and do a fair bit of cross-referencing with catalogues of the period. I'll then put a few trains together so we can end the video on a bit of traffic. So be prepared to be bombarded with Märklin jargon and reference numbers, the bread and butter of many Märklin collectors. This episode is likely to feel very geeky if you are not one of them. If this tickles your curiosity, grab a cup or glass of the poison of your choice, sit back, relax, and make yourself comfortable. All right, let the show begin. I think it is worth starting with a quick refresher for the benefit of recent subscribers or occasional viewers among you. I collect model trains in HO scale produced by Märklin between 1980 and 1990. Taste aside, there is certainly a bit of nostalgia at play here as I grew up in the period and spent some of it playing with a Märklin train set. I also find this decade interesting because Märklin introduced many changes as part of a transition away from toys aimed at children towards models aimed at modelers and collectors, also known as older children. The choice of collection theme was also driven by more practical considerations, such as affordability and space constraints on one side, and the need to keep my collecting in check on the other. So with this in mind, and after a bit of research, I decided to focus only on items listed in both General Program and Export Models catalogues of the period. This represents roughly 650 references, and I have set myself the goal of owning one example of each of them. This approach leaves anything that didn't feature in the catalogues out. For example, many beer wagons and distributor specials that could have been found in shops alongside the standard Märklin products are out of scope. For the last few years, I have been ticking items off my list, slowly but surely. This has generated most of the content I uploaded to this channel. The collection has now grown to just under 1,100 models, which is more than the 650 references I mentioned earlier. Why is that? A portion of them were updated during their life cycle, so can exist in several versions. I deal with this on a case-by-case basis, and some have or will become part of the collection at some point, while others won't. But the main reason for the difference is simply down to the fact that I like to run my models, so need to be able to put trains together. For this, I often need more than one of a particular item, so I have invested accordingly. I still have a small way to go to get to a state where I could consider my goal reached. I think I am now down to the last 10 models or sets I really need. The collection is stored in these drawers I have set up along the wall. If you are wondering what all this plastic is for in the background of many of my videos, this is still relatively compact. If I had chosen the same approach for the 1990s, I'd probably have no space left for a layout. Alright, I think we've covered the basics, which should be enough to put this pile of models in context. It contains every Belgian reference I have in the collection. Let's have a look at them. We'll start our journey in 1980. I'm sure you'll remember this cover. The German Class 120 prototype was the big event that year. Belgium was well represented as far as locomotives were concerned. French, Dutch or Italian Märklinists might have even said overrepresented. 3 models were carried over from the 1979 program. They were all based on tooling introduced in the 1960s. The longest-running reference was the 3066, a Type 204 diesel, originally released in 1964. In 1980, we were on version 2. It had been in production since 1967. This model was featured a few times on the channel, as were many other models you will see today. I wouldn't be able to insert that many link cards in this video, but a click on the search option on the channel homepage, followed by entering the reference number, should give you a list of videos to choose from. Then we have the 3086, a Type 64 steam locomotive. It is a Prussian P8 in SNCB livery. This model had been in the catalogue since 1971. This is the then current and last version 6 released in 1978. It's a gorgeous little thing, but I love P8s. The last model available before 1980 was this 3149, released in 1979. It is a Type 80 shunter of the SNCB. The prototype was based on the German V60 and produced under license in Belgium in the early 1960s. So that would be our baseline as of late 1979. You'll notice that we have nothing to put behind these locomotives. Not good, but sadly a common state of affairs for non-German material in the catalogue. You would have had to look at other manufacturers. I think Lima was one of the very few making SNCB rolling stock at the time. Märklin had discontinued the 4656 freight car in 1972 and the 4069 sleeping car in 1974. There were also a few new items in 1980. First of all, the 3152, representing a Type 16, a multi-phase electric locomotive, in its original blue livery. This was a brand new tooling at the time. And we also got a coach to go with it, believe it or not. Enter 4148, a first-class coach of Type A9 made by Eurofima. This was also new tooling. These coaches were ordered by many European companies and were just being deployed at the time. It was a rare opportunity for model railway manufacturers to bulk up their product range with minimal investment. Märklin would reuse the tooling with other railway companies during the 1980s. That was it for year 1980. On to 1981. We are in familiar territory. Only one change that year in the form of a withdrawal. The 3086 is discontinued after 10 years. Well, almost. During 1981, you could get the same model as a kit under reference 3986. This wasn't part of the general program. One had to know about kits and place a special order at the model shop. And we're in 1982. No brand new item this year in the general program, but we have an update to 3149. We have a livery tweak in the form of a new running number and updated signage. Then we have the first among a few items that were produced for Belgium but did not feature in the catalogues until a few years later. Here is 3111, It's a very nice model, but a complete fantasy. You might recognize a Bavarian S36. The less than a handful of units Belgium received as reparation after World War I were only very briefly in service and never received a new livery. I made a video about this model if you want the full story. It came out in two versions. The first one had a red buffer beam on the tender. This was changed the same year to black, and this is the version we have here. Then we have this 4568, a Valio Finland advertisement model based on a 4415 refrigerated wagon. The topic of advertisement wagons is a very vast one. They are also commonly referred to as beer wagons. Märklin had launched the 4415 refrigerated wagon in 1976, then proceeded to release a few branded variations in the general program over the following years. By 1980, this had become a service offered to third parties. Anyone who could afford to order a minimum quantity could have a bespoke wagon made. This business quickly picked up and became popular with advertisers and distributors, with hundreds of different designs produced yearly between 1980 and the early 2000s. Since then, the pace has slowed down a bit, but the volume is still roughly 50 to 75 releases per year, which is not negligible. The scheme was extended to other types of wagons over time. To name a few, the 4481 container in the 1980s and the 4680 G12 in the 1990s. There were others too. No one knows exactly how many different models of this type were produced. The model railway directory I use to manage my collection lists close to 6,000 references. There was also a yearly coal guide dedicated to special models with a few more. I think the last one of these guides came out in 2018, but I am sure some will be missing whatever the source. Now, this is not a topic I find very interesting, hence why I am limiting the collection to items listed in the catalogues. And before you start commenting, me not finding a topic interesting doesn't mean I hate it. The variety of designs allows people to collect based on a particular interest, for example, beer, chocolate, or automotive. As a result, these wagons have amassed quite a following and are very collectible. At a minimum, they would be a good way to cover a wall with something railway-related in a train room. All right, back to our show and tell. 1983. Nothing changes in the general program, but Märklin had begun to think a bit more about the structure of its international sales. The export program is officially launched that year, with only a handful of models by the looks of it. Here is the only document I know of. We have one more Belgian model, the Seka tank wagon, reference number 4561. From that point onwards, new releases of Belgian models will increasingly take place through the export program, and the length of time in production will also start to decrease, especially for locomotives and sets. 1984. Special year for Märklin as it celebrated its 125th anniversary, probably one of my favorite catalogues. It contains a few new SNCB releases. 3163, a Type 16 locomotive with an updated livery. It is technically identical to the earlier 3152. It replaces in the general program. We have something for second-class passengers as well, in the form of a B11 Eurofima coach, model number 4166. And there were a few more models available in the export program. I have no brochure for that year. I am not sure one was even released at the time. If you know, please leave a comment. I'd also be interested in a copy. So I had to tap in the dark for that year. One thing I am sure of is that 3152 remained available to order in Belgium and Luxembourg. And we have a few more refrigerated wagons. 441504, that's Côte d'Or chocolate. 441507, it's Knorr or Knorr in French, condiments. 4415-13, that's Frima, frozen foods. There were other refrigerated wagons of this type released the same year. These three are the only ones that appeared in an official Märklin export brochure in 1985, the year we are going to look at next. 1985. We passed the halfway mark on our little trip. Here is the cover of the catalogue. There was no change in the general program, but the export models brochure for Benelux was another story. It was packed with new releases. Well, if you can call them new. The 3135 rail bus, most of you will recognize the classic 3016 and 416 trailer in disguise. The SNCB never used this type of German rail bus, but the Chemin de Fer des Trois Vallées, a preservation society, acquired one and painted it in a Belgian livery. Some coaches of type Donnerbüchsen, 4113, 4114 and 4115. Here I am not sure any coaches of this type were ever in service under the SNCB network after World War II. We then have a few new sleeping cars. 4069, that's a re-release of the model discontinued in 1974. And 4118, which is a rail tour sleeping car. It's based on the 4069. Then we have a few freight options. 4447, that's a Solvay tank wagon. And 4656, it's another re-release. A 1000 G1 side unloader. It's the same as the model discontinued in 1972. And finally, more refrigerated wagons. Most new releases are tobacco and alcohol themed. It is also where the previous releases are finally listed. They all have a reference starting in 4415 followed by an additional number. So drum is 441519. Harris Porto is 18. Veuve Clicquot is 17. Midland is 20. And Amphora, that's tobacco, is 21. Some references within the 441501 to 10 range were used multiple times for different countries within the export program. For example, 441504 could refer to either the Belgian Côte d'Or, the Swedish Costa Boda, or the Danish Hung wagons. Something to be aware of when buying. Note that the Valio Finland wagon has a new model number. It's 441501, but I am pretty sure it was still from the original batch produced in 1982. I think the distributor in Belgium might have been a tad too optimistic with the volumes ordered. The same applies to 3111, I think, as I am yet to find one produced later than 1982. That was it for that year. Let's move to 1986. Here is another nice catalogue cover. In the general program, we have one change this year. The 3149 has been withdrawn after 7 years. And in the export program, again, I don't know whether a Benelux brochure was printed that year. I cannot find any reference to it anywhere. The comment section is all yours. We have a few new coaches and wagons. Let's start with the coaches. We have yet more sleeping cars. 4116, which is an SNCB sleeping car in a new livery. And 4119, which is a rail tour sleeping car, this time with a green background. And we have a few more freight options. 4404, which is the Coley or small parcels wagon. And 4723, a side unloader based on the existing 4631 of the Deutsche Bundesbahn. But that's not incorrect. Belgium bought some. I think the refrigerated wagons disappeared from the program that year, although there might have been quite a few of them still on the shelves in model shops. All right, on to 1987. In the general program that year, the 4148 was withdrawn, and there was one more withdrawal in the export program, the 3135 Railbus. Now, there is a subsequent version of this model with the inscription Chemin de Fer des Trois Vallées on the sides of the motorized unit. This was a special commission ordered by the Preservation Society for its members and friends in 1989. I think the reference number is 3135S. Then, in the export program still, we have a few new releases. 3316, that's a Type 25 freight locomotive based on a German BR50 design. You have seen this one on the channel a few months ago. Then something new in Europe, the ENOS Open Wagons. The SNCB reference was 4716. And finally, the 4762 Silo Wagon. We have version 1 here, painted in beige grey. And that was it for 1987. Look at this beautiful Württemberg Class C, one of my favorite locomotives. It must be 1988. In the general program, the 3066 has finally been withdrawn after 24 years of continuous production. It is replaced by an updated version, the 3133, with a new livery, and the class number has also changed to a more contemporary 54. 3163, the Series 16, is also dropped from the general program, but remains available to order in Belgium and Luxembourg only through the export program. Also in the export program, here is an updated 4762 Silo Wagon, so version 2, this time in a light grey livery, almost white. We have an additional Solvay tank wagon, a longer version this time under reference 4746. And a sliding door wagon under reference 4730. And we have a minor change with 4656 with a different running number and different shades of brown in some cases. I think there would have been a lighter and a more darker shade, depending on the production date. And last but not least, yet another sleeping car. Oh, again, this time under reference 4120 with a yellow stripe. It's quite nice as well, but still the same as the 4069. You could have been led to believe that Belgian people only travelled lying down with this choice. All right, we are nearing the end of our journey. We have now landed in 1989, and the catalogue cover features a representation of a perfect German family. Inside, we find a release of a new Type 16 locomotive. This one is blue with yellow accents. The reference number 3363. It is based on the same tooling as the previous versions, but fitted with an electronic reversing unit and a different type of bulbs. In the export program, all locomotives have been dropped, so has the 4118 sleeping car. And that was it for 1989, and this show and tell. Right, I'm going to put a few trains together so we can watch a bit of traffic to finish the video. One moment, please. And we are back. We have a few bits and pieces on the move. I think there is no need to spend any time breaking down the compositions today. I picked items that I mostly haven't seen in action for a while, if at all. So, we've seen the choice available for the 1980s. Quite a few models accumulated over the decade, but I think it is fair to say that despite the number of releases, anyone trying to model the SNCB on a 3-rail system would have struggled, as the compositions moving on the track demonstrate. If we look at the decade, there was only one new locomotive tooling, the Type 16 electric locomotive. The remaining items are based on existing Märklin models, mostly used for other railway companies until then. One could easily put this down to the fact that Belgium is a relatively small country with a limited potential to achieve a good return on investment, but other countries didn't fare much better. Märklin had been lethargic in this respect since the late 1960s, and a common criticism from international customers was that Märklin didn't do much outside of German models. I certainly remember hearing these comments at the time. While the export program started in the 1980s would have been a good way to try and remedy this, it achieved the opposite effect, in my opinion. There were a few nice releases, but overall, the program sadly gives an overwhelming one-size-fits-all impression, as most types of models are variation-based on a shared tooling, usually German. Whilst the effort might have been welcomed by long-suffering international Märklinists, I can't help but think that the whole thing was an exercise of quantity over quality in the end. SNCB modelers would have had to wait until 1993 to finally be able to buy a boxed set of coaches to fit the 3086 withdrawn in 1981. And until 2000 for Belgian suburban coaches that would have fit the 3363 Type 16 released in 1989. Okay, enough negativity. At the end of the day, I collect Märklin items, and this is a Märklin-centric channel. I wouldn't do this if I hated the stuff. We have reached the end of what became a very long video. If you have made it that far, you have been very brave. Thank you for spending so much of your valuable time with me today. I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane, and if you did, please let others know with a little thumbs up, a comment, or a subscription. And if you'd like, you can also contribute to the upkeep of the collection by buying a super thanks. Thanks again so much for your support. Until next time, bye for now.